It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. I have with me today EzraRunnaround.
Hello, everyone.
What's up, man?
It's good to be here. It's good to be here. I'm glad to finally appear on the carousel.
Yes, well, thank you for coming. You are here because you are a little lit guy.
Yep.
Lit guy in the lit scene.
Yes, so one of the most prestigious literary podcasts around. Solely,
Yes.
in fact, we're one of the few people who actually cover distant lit in an actual critical way.
Yeah, the lit scene that is exploding across the country from Los Angeles. We've just had so much, fanfare about this lit scene. What can be said? You know what I'm saying? No, but look, everybody has a million questions about it. We had this scheduled anyway, so it seemed like a good thing to combine and just talk about this very silly Rolling Stone article.
The timing ended up working out brilliantly, actually.
Yes, which has been completely buried from the Rolling Stone site. It's like, even though it's being picked up everywhere, it's like being picked up by Yahoo and like all kinds of stuff. You literally cannot see it on the site. It's been like taken away, even though I guarantee you it is their most read article in a very long time. But they are keeping it from everybody because I'm sure they're getting tons of backlash on their own channels of platforming some fascists, who would dare to have a party in LA about the anti-woke, because this is what we're all about. We're all about anti-woke, baby. I just walk in there and I say anti-woke. That's who I am. I am anti-woke. That's the two words that describe me. Anti-woke. That's it. I don't even care about the writing. I just care that it's anti-woke, right?
Yeah, listen, it's one step away. Mussolini would have loved Nutcracker. I think we can all agree on this.
Yes. As long as it was anti-woke, Okay, so what do you make of all this? There's been lots of YouTube responses. Many people are making YouTube responses. Lots of people who I thought I was friends with are hating publicly, which is amazing. You know how people are. Tell us your hot take as somebody who is part of the anti-woke scene. First of all, tell us, who are you? Why are you a member of the anti-woke lit scene? And what do you think of this?
Well, I would say, we're just more pro, actual verifiable talent amongst our scene. And I'd say overall...
Wait, dude, you're kind of soft, bro.
Oh, okay. See here, I'm a little closer to the mic. Can I sound a little bit better?
Yeah, now
turn the
you're
gain
better.
up a little bit. Here, I'll turn the gain up. So, I am on Twitter formerly known Twitter X. I'm known as EzraRunnaround, but I also go by Gabriel Sinclair, 1/3 of the Tookies Mag Sidebar podcast. Our whole point.
Dude, you turn your gain up, man. You're really quiet.
Okay, turn the gain up a little bit more. How do I sound now? Better?
Yeah, you're better.
There we go. So, our whole podcast at Tookies Mag, our whole point is to actually, actually mold these artists. They submit their pieces.
Yeah,
to us.
dude, you're too soft, man. You're too soft.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing. I've literally never had that problem on
All right.
here.
Okay. Now, how about here? Better?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So our whole podcast is basically discussing, not necessarily breaking books on anti-art or anti-woke, but actually being having anti-talent. And we did a whole episode yesterday. We uploaded yesterday on this, and we're 100% positive on this. The very fact that Rolling Stone has to give their little cachet of their old, Hunter S. Thompson days to, edgy artists, and now they had to give it to guys like us. We thought just on that terms alone, it was a big W. Even if you dislike, let's say, everyone gives shit for the book covers, for example, of, let's say, Nutcracker or Delicious Tacos or stuff like that. There's been a lot of discourse on that recently. But I'd say overall, it's just the mere fact that Rolling Stone has to do a piece on us, on the very idea of like, right wing based literature. I think on that fact alone that they have to comment on this is just on its own a W, basically.
Yeah, everybody really crap from all angles. Absolutely everybody crapped on this piece. And, people internally said, people like on our side were like, well, anti-woke is not the correct designation. That's completely disingenuous. And then the left, of course, said, this isn't real. Taylor Lorenz said, this isn't real. This is not a thing. This is not happening. These events did not happen. This is not a thing. And, then all the people who are supposedly like our friends are like, this is lame. This is like so lame. This is like 3 years ago. What did this article come from 3 years ago? So everybody had found a reason to fucking hate the article. And, when I first read it, I was like I sort of glazed it over. Like I didn't actually read it super carefully. And I was like, it reminds me of an article that I would have written for LA Weekly, like really earlier in my career, in that it's kind of a projection of John's mind more so than it's like super accurate reporting, like this guy, John, he has an idea in his head of, obviously, there's nothing cool going on with mainstream literature. So something cool has to be going on somewhere. And he gets a vague whiff that people are having parties in LA. And therefore, this becomes the rebel group, right? This becomes the rebel guys, the rebel literary dudes. But in reality, like, neither does Rolling Stone exist anymore, nor does this type of journalism, nor does anti-woke alt-lit exist. None of this exists. This is all a projection of this is all a projection of a framework that existed in the 90s, right?
It's all kayfabe. It's all kayfabe.
Yeah, literary bad boys, Rolling Stone magazine, heartthrob writers, cool gonzo journalists. None of those things exist anymore. But we've revived them for like as you said, we should talk about Baudrillard. All of this is like a copy of a copy of a copy, kind of, right?
Yeah. It's to make this party existed to make Rolling Stone seem legit. It's their version of Disney World, basically, for all intents and purposes. It's trying.
Well, I don't think it exists to make Rolling Stone legit. I don't think that. I think this was a guy. I think this is a journalist. He writes for a bunch of magazines, and he wanted to cover this. Rolling Stone has nothing going on. And, I think he had to fight really hard to get this past his editors because they, of course, wanted it to be a list of sins, right? This could have so easily been the exact same thing. And then, he dug up some tweet of mine in which I said, let's nuke India. You know what I'm saying? And then it could have been, he says he doesn't care and he's tolerant, but actually, look, he wants to nuke India. He could have very easily done that, but he didn't. He wrote it straight. He wrote it as just like, hey, these are guys hanging out, which is all this is. This is literally just people hanging out. That is all that's happening.
Yeah, I was curious on this. So did he just reach out to attend this party? Did he just proactively take his own initiative, or?
No. So this dude is paid by Mossad via me. We have a deal. No, he's paid by Peter Thiel, actually. No, dude, fuck these people. God, it's so funny being on the other side of it because like you're seeing it and you're seeing all these people say, this is clearly paid. This is clearly a paid network. It's like, it is. Yeah. If you knew, I know how much this guy got paid for this article. It's not from the magazine, and it's not a lot. And look, I used to be this type of journalist. And so I know how these things go. No, he got whiff of me I can't even fucking remember. Like years ago, he's been kind of palling around. He's been trying to write articles about our scene for a few years. And he got introduced to me, I think, via another journalist a long time ago. And I think I had like coffee with him, and then I think I invited him to some thing or another. I can't even remember. And then he was talking to other people in the scene for a while, and I was out of it. And then he kind of came back to me because he wanted to write an article about me that got killed. And then he finally got this article about like the anti-woke thing approved, right? This was like finally the angle that worked. And he said, hey, I'm finally doing it. I'm writing a thing about your scene. And I was like, okay. And he was like, what's the angle? And he's like, oh, it's anti-woke lit. And I'm like, all right, well, who do I know? And I gave him Tacos, and I gave him Adam, and I gave him Matt Pegas. And, I was like, hey, meet these three people. And he took it from there. And that's how this came to be.
Well, it's a good ranking, and it's especially comparing the last big event, because the tone is completely different from, like, let's say the Vegas event, which both you and I attended. It was that one. It wasn't even trying to dox; it was more just extremely catty male HR.
Yes, it was the gay. I'm the gay in the corner. This whole thing sucks. But we looked really bad in that for things that are completely out of my control. But he painted us as looking really bad. So that was like a huge loss, right? And I think a lot of people were like, really relished in seeing us fail in the media, even though the actual event didn't really fail. We had like 200 based Twitter people in a dope penthouse for like all night long. It was really fun, but he took the spacing of the main part of the ball got screwed up, and so a lot of things, many mistakes were made, many on my part specifically. So that really like hurt sort of my clout and our clout for a long time. And not that like my clout really deserves to be revived from this, because I actually have very, very little to do personally with any of these lit things at all. I'm really not a lit guy. I mean, I like reading, but I'm not like I'm not super involved in like any of these presses or anything,
Right. Now, would you say in terms of events like this, like, do you think the more intimate style, I think the house party aesthetic was a brilliant move for my 2 cents of it. The idea of like just crowding a bunch of young, virile, artistic dudes. You got these guys with immense talent. Adam, his infinite talent is only measured by his boundless gift of grace. He's funny, he's charismatic. He comes off that way. He's probably the biggest Chad in the piece, actually. Like John McDermott seems like he really likes Adam.
Yeah, he really does, doesn't he? It's very, very true.
And he's very very magnetic in real life. He's just like he is in the piece. But you said recently on your Why the Left is Winning a Battle of Images, you said like the most authentic right-wing talent. The problem with right-wing talent is they're a bunch of skittish, like badly behaved stallions. And that's our whole like mystique is that. The whole point of like right-wing artists is to be kind of this boundary pushing, trying to push the envelope. I think it even says pushing buttons on the headline of the piece. And the problem with trying to centralize right-wing art is that, at the end of the day, is the managerialism, the people cutting the checks, the managerial aspects of it. You can't be too edgy. You can't be too antisocial, which is the problem, because the whole, being an online e-right chud, the whole point of being a chud or being a right-wing artist online is that you're innately kind of antisocial. You're always kind of pushing against the grain.
Yeah. And?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you this effectively because, I'm a critic. You're literally, what do you see what you do with the Will Agency? Would you say PR? Is that a good description?
No, you do very, very little PR, which is funny, right?
Because, or marketing in general.
Dude, what? Oh yeah, here. Okay, so check this out. Great. LA goes anti-woke. Here, there's this thing has 50,000 views and like 80 billion, like 600 comments, all about this thing. This is actually very fair. Clownfish TV did a thing on us, and it's actually extremely fair. It really is very fair. But anyway, a lot of people are talking about this. Many people hating. No, we don't really do PR, man. PR. You know what always surprises me about the world of marketing in general is really people know very, very, very little about it. And wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay,
we know very,
I'm
very little
frozen.
about it.
My camera's frozen. But
Well, they got you at a good angle. You look at
yeah.
the frozen. Yeah.
People know very, very little about the way that marketing works, and they don't want to know about it. That's what's funny. Even particular people on the right, they want to live in the fantasy that the things they see in the newspaper got there objectively. They literally think, when I look at the news source, that was an enterprising journalist who decided to report on this. They hate knowing that the thing that they're reading got there because of a publicist. But that's true 85% of the time. So PR and a publicist is basically the same thing. But public relations is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, behind the scenes, I'm going to make you a star. Or you got an initiative coming up, we're going to blow the doors off of this thing. PR is getting people's name in the news, right? That's what PR is. It's very different than branding. Creative branding is creativity. It's Don Draper. It's ads, taglines, videos, logos, billboards. That's branding. PR is like the sinister dark arts of, it's very female dominated. It's like relationships and Rolodex. And, I'm going to tap Taylor Lorenz. Taylor Lorenz is going to write this piece about you because we have a good relationship. That's PR. We do a very small amount of PR. Every now and then we get hired to do it. I don't like doing it. But there's huge demand for it because everybody wants to be in the news. So that's what PR is. But we really do very little of it. And, it's funny because I do see why people looking at this thing that just came out, like, it's funny because a bunch of people have been like, oh, this is clearly the PR agency in question clearly made this happen, because that's kind of, it's almost like he's setting it up that way as if like I got paid by New Ritual Press to like make an article happen. Like that is so not what happened. Like that could not be fucking further from the truth.
Well,
like this was totally organically occurring.
Yeah, well, Baltic has very deep pockets. The
Yeah.
army.
Right. Yes. He's secretly paying us to get us featured in Rolling Stone. Like, no, that is absolutely not what happened. Nobody made any money from this initiative. This was a completely organically occurring thing.
Actually, and also, whose idea was it to do the house party angle, by the way?
I don't think it's a house. That's just the resources we have at our disposal. We all hang out at Hadrian's house. And Hadrian is this canceled guy. He's been on the pod. He used to run Cine Family. Great guy. Very unique guy. Really one of a kind. These people only exist in like LA and New York. He's like a total Gen X like culture vulture. And he got very unfairly canceled. One of the most bullshit cancellations I've ever seen at the height of Me Too. He was like one of the first guys to get canceled. And so he has parties at his house, and it's great. It's like a kind of a hub for us to gather. It's sort of centrally located. I had my birthday party there a couple years ago. We've done all kinds of shit there. We used to have a better place that he ran before his house, but that didn't work out for political reasons. But yeah, me and Hadrian have been bumming around together for a while. We've screened movies together in various places. But I just hang around. I just try and connect people and like build this scene as much as I can. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, in terms of scene building, because I thought it was a brilliant move, because that band, the All American Rejects, they've been doing the house party angle, catering to millennial nostalgia of the house party. Because Lord knows the idea of house parties and bands is mostly alien to Zoomers. It's more of like a very millennial memory, like a core memory for the millennial mind.
Well, yeah, but it's like the funny thing is, it was totally natural. This wasn't. I mean, like, it wasn't at all like contrived. The whole Equinox thing, this was totally Adam and Matt. They just thought this shit all up, and they had a fun little party. Like that was it.
Yeah,
And it was at Hadrian's house solely because that was the only place we could do it. Like that's the only that's why.
yeah, and his Adams decorating and the overall management of the thing was it was perfect. It was like just a beautiful lightning in a bottle kill shot in terms of just aesthetic unity.
Well, yeah, and he's great at that. He's great at throwing these events for sure.
Yeah, and I was going to actually ask you this in terms of because we discussed this on our covering of the episode. Because you notice with the post vibe shift, we also discussed this idea of the vibe shift. I think McDermott even mentions the idea of the vibe shift here. In terms of the post vibe shift, post Trump presidency, you mentioned this also in your stream about the left's battle of the images. That we, in many ways, at post Trump's election, we've given up our humor, our ability to make satire and be funny, and focus purely on truth and actually poking fun. And giving black eyes to not only our enemy, also ourselves. But kind of focusing on purely on being reactive rather than proactively trying to seek out a fight or trying to build things. And in terms of the battle of mimetics, Nick Lane used to call this effective fragmentation. In terms that's the left likes to, you got Mamdani over in New York trying to build up again to have a unifying front, especially with the whole Gaza thing. Because that's our biggest hole in our armor is the whole Gaza and Israel thing, right? We can't coalesce around that point because we always get shattered due to the obvious mimetic reasons why we can't talk about it, right? Because of the connotations. But with the left, so they can easily coalesce around one big welding point. Well, with the right, we have to like guerrilla movements or like kind of splinter cells. We always have to be splintered, and in some ways, it's effective fragmentation. Like a pincer move. You have Lomez. He looks very clean cut, very PMC, going to New York Times podcast. With Passage Prize, they're going for much more of a clean cut NPR, right wing NPR. That's what Passage Prize is going to do for the most part.
Yes.
While what Matt Pegas and Baltic and Adam are trying to do, they're trying to keep Punk's pyre still burning. That Punk edge, that feeling. And there's a handful of people like this. Are you familiar at all with Rachel Haywire at all, or no?
Yes.
She did that wonderful art gallery in Fiume, I think it was called. In New
How
York.
was that? Did you go to that?
No, a friend of mine, Gio Penicelli, he went and pimped out his art over there. It was quite a success overall for the most part. And of course, the most the left did was get triggered and send very catty pamphlets about this is not actual futurism. This is not actually really revolutionary at all. But when the extent of them is complaining, that didn't even get a hit piece. They just got a bunch of libtards sending pamphlets. Literally, they posted pamphlets, and it's literally a classic leftist wall of text meme. It's like 5 pages long pamphlet. It was ridiculous. That was the worst of it.
Yeah. So you're saying that yes, it's very obvious that a shift is occurring, right? It's very obvious that new lines are forming. Right. I think who is carrying the torch of the punk rock bad boy? I think that's kind of like what you're asking. I think there's a quote from the piece that, Dime Square was great, but it's all girls and gays. I think that's true. I think Dime Square dude, they had this guy who I actually just followed named Matt Gazda, who was people always forget this. That was what Dime Square was for a minute. When I showed up in Dime Square, that's what Dime Square was. It was this guy, Matt Gazda, this playwright, doing kind of super immersive theater. The kind of thing where it's you don't know who's the audience and who's the character. And it's, is this about his girlfriend in real life or is it about his girlfriend in the play? You don't know. I never went to any of this shit. But it was all staged at this weird guy's house in Dime Square that I went to in New York City. I went to sort of the proto version of a lot of this stuff. And I was blown away by the amount of hot girls and the just sort of the popularity of this shit going on. And yeah, it was all vaguely right leaning. And it did have punk rock vibes. It did have that sort of feel of oh, wow, this is cool. This is I don't want to say it felt like it was the cool kids because it didn't. It felt more like it was kind of a ragtag scene, it was cool. It was cool, not in the sense of cool as in elite, but in cool as in genuinely some sort of cohesion going on around. You would call it anti-woke, right? I mean, even then.
Yeah, at the
What?
very least, it wasn't cringe, and it was something new. There was an actual something, a vibe or something. You'd never seen anything like this before at the time.
Yeah, Honor Levy was a big part of it. There was this Forever magazine thing that was a big part of it with Annika Levy and Madeline Cash. And are they anti-woke? Are they based? I don't think they're based, right? They're not like Republicans, and they're not like racist. It's like they're just like kind of. What are they? Are they a reaction? Not really. Like, what are they? I don't know. So, anyway, it was a scene. It was like a moment, and it was vaguely related to Yarvin, vaguely related to Urbit. That's how I got in. I got in via the Urbit route. It's like suddenly I was there in Dime Square because I was associated with Urbit. And it was vibey and cool. The best part that I remember from this whole thing was Urbit Assembly like 3 years ago in Miami. And that was where all the pieces came together. Like that's where James Pogue wrote his Vanity Fair piece that I was in about me and Walter Kern like fighting at Urbit Assembly at 4:00 in the morning at what's that really fancy hotel in Miami, the one that everybody goes to, but Fauna or whatever. And that was great. That was such a moment. It was like so many names you'd recognize all together, but we were all like getting to know each other. Like that was long before any of the sort of like process that you're talking about of like making a political coalition. None of that existed at that point. And that was really only like 3 years ago. And then, I think me and Zero HP were kind of going back and forth on this the other day. Zero HP's allegation, or the way that he describes it, is that we won, right? And once you win, it's not about red pilling people anymore. Everybody's already received all the red pills they're going to receive. Now it's about governing, and how do you govern? How do you take the red pills and actually implement them? And so once you're in the implementation phase, of course you're not going to see red pills on the timeline anymore because people can't be red pilled anymore. Everybody who's going to be red pilled is already be red pilled. Now we're in power, so shut the fuck up, toe the party line, get BBB passed, have victories like, everybody thinks the Wyoming thing or the fucking Utah land thing is a victory. That's what they're focused on. They're focused on political victories, right? That's his position. And so that's why he's saying the exciting Bappishness, the rebel stuff on the timeline has kind of evaporated. I think that's Zero HP's point. What do you think of that?
Well, I respect Zero HP. He's a man of infinite talent as well.
He's a great writer. His work is really good. It's actually, his shit's very good. He's got some real good material.
No, he's the modern Borges in a lot of ways. We reviewed his work in the past. He's a brilliant short story writer. I would have to kind of disagree because what in that case, if we won, where do all the hardcore party loyalists hang out? You know what I mean? Where is the square? When I'll give two examples. Where's the Red Square? Where did when the Soviets won, in Russia, they made, monuments out of the cafes they hung out at. And it was a point of pride to go, we used to drink coffee here in but when I first got out of the Tsar's prison camps, we went here for our first coffee to talk about the revolution and so forth along these lines. And same thing with Mussolini in the 1920s, all these edgy, young bloods, these Italian futurists, saying with they used to wear leather jackets in Italian, literally says, we don't give a fuck. It was literally Italian slang at the time. That was literally a point of the whole edginess of the early fascist movement at the time. And, they would have public spaces, literally own space. And this also ties into the arts. One of the few openly right-wing sculptors, Villiers, Villier, talks about this in modern arts and modern sculpture in particular. They're afraid to take up space, like literally physical space. If you look at all these new statues coming up, like I think the governor of Florida somewhere revealed the 101th Thomas Jefferson statue, and of course there's him sitting on a bench, boring as fuck. right? No sense of any aesthetic taste, no sense of owning space. We've won. Where is the giant Trump statue with his fist up in the air? Why isn't that in front of Washington, D.C.?
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the sense that I get as no, sorry, continue. No, you're making good points.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I would disagree with. He's 90% true, except we don't have our stamp. We need a visual mimetic stamp of we are in charge. We are on top of this wave.
Well, also, it's just like, wait a second. I just completely agree with Zero HB, disagree with him about this because, again, totally respectfully, I'm not like talking shit about him. I'm just like disagreeing with his opinion. I want to make that clear. But when you win, you have more of the juice. You get more juice, not less juice.
Yeah.
You don't trade your juice and then you win and then the juice stops flowing. If the juice stops flowing, you didn't win, in my opinion. Right. So it's like, oh, we won, now we have to all be behaved. Like, no, if we win, we should be less well behaved.
Right.
Like what do you mean? Like, why would we win and then, we all need to conduct ourselves with more candor. And, the literary scene, we all need to act very well. And, don't you know, like, if you want to get elevated by whoever, you really need to behave yourself. And, you can't say these things. And, you got to really behave because blah, blah, blah. I mean, one of the most impressive things I've seen is the White House timeline on Twitter. Like, they're based as fuck. Like, they're way more based than all the supposedly, like, cool kid writers who are like trying to get in the administration and therefore they're like acting nice all the time. It's like the White House, like Twitter is like actually very based. Remember they did the arresting the woman, you know what I'm talking about? They did the what's the fucking anime, the Japanese anime thing that we just did? I think the White House was the one that tweeted
the Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, Studio Ghibli of the woman being deported thing. I think the White House did that, and I was like, damn, you have all these people out here like trying to behave well, and the White House is like retweeting this of like the immigrant woman cartoon Ghibli. Like, look at this. Yeah. Like, this is like based as fuck. Like, what, and so that's been the best sign to me, like that we actually are winning. Yeah, this was the White House X account tweeted this, and it's like that's a sign to me that should be like what we're fucking doing, because that just shows we won. When you can do that shit without any fear of reprisal, that shows we have been victorious. Whereas what I'm seeing and hearing a lot these days is like, oh, well, we need to have X, right-wing based trad mom. She needs to really be in charge of the development decisions here because, we don't discriminate really. It's like, we won. We're the coalition who won. And to me, that's missing the point. I think that, as long as the managers are in charge, as long as that managerial layer, until that's controlled and those people are genuinely like disempowered, we got to stay based, man. We got to stay based as fuck. And we should just be trying to fill the feed with more red pills. We should be red pilling all fucking day long. As soon as we lose the ability to meme, we're fucked.
Yeah, because that was our most effective weapon was memes and satire and being funny. Right. And it's like, there's a reason, before I sent you this wonderful video of the famous Marshall McLuhan's mentor, Wyndham Lewis, had his great essay about how stifling humor was in England at the time. This was around right before World War II. And he's like, the problem with English humor is that it's meant to tickle and not tackle. It's supposed to be in good humor. There's such thing, you're not allowed to punch below the belt. Even with your enemies, you have to be deputized. You have to have an official license of humor. Even back then, you basically have to have do you have a license for that?
You got a license for that joke? Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and that's the problem with today. Like we're very aware of, are we being too much? We're constantly counter signaling each other. And Trump gets to say, I don't have what fucking clue what Israel and Iran are doing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The White House is free. Stephen Miller's reacting to World Star hip hop videos recently.
Yeah, is he?
To certain young fellas fist fighting in the pool.
What did he say?
Something like this has been more detrimental to the public health than any natural occurrence or something along these lines. These bunch of black kids fighting in the pool, and this is Stephen Miller, for God's sake, Like,
Dude, I got a call or a text from my uncle last night, and he's a very great guy, really funny, but very mild mannered Christian, Midwestern, and they're from a town in Illinois called Glen Ellen, and Glen Ellen is like the idyllic Chicago suburb. It's just pure suburbia. Very quiet, very leafy. Everybody is extremely well behaved. And they just had like a black people hood takeover of their pool. Did you see this?
No.
Like black people from the hood came, 200 to 300 of them, and took over the community pool, smoked weed, drank alcohol, and they pushed the pool administrator into the water.
Yes, no, the pool man. You tweeted this. Yeah, he said, I remember this.
Yeah, it's unfucking believable. And this is like, it's like I think this is kind of the point of what we're saying. It's like until normal people of America get back the ability to have men in that situation go to that pool and physically defend their community in real fucking life from people who are there endangering the children of their community. Until we get that wildness back, we're on the wrong path. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what we have on the timeline. We have that wildness. So if suddenly the timeline becomes, don't counter signal Israel, don't counter, are you not trusting the plan, panicking? It's like, okay, I get it. Like, look, I do get it. I completely get it. If we're trying to pass the BBB and we got to promote the shit out of that, and we're going to fund ICE in the way that we need to, like, fine, let's get on board. But that doesn't mean now that we've won, we have to stop tweeting red pills. Like, come on. No, we got to keep this shit up. We've got the whole rest of the America to convince. We've convinced a bunch of people, but there's still many, many people to go. Obviously, the men of Glen Ellen are not doing jack shit. So it's like, until that happens, we're just starting.
Yeah, when Caribbean Cruises is more red pill than right wing with because you see the Caribbean Cruises, all more black people are coming in, so they have to
Carnival, right?
Carnival. Yeah. They have to ban hip hop on the karaoke machines, and no anyone under 21 is not allowed to walk out. Like, when they're more based in red pill than solidly right wing states and county-ships, and it's supposed to be a vibe shift America. That's us squandering our win.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. And it's like, and it's also, I think we're also starting to, the way that I put it is, we're starting to be the current thingers. It's like you get on the timeline, and now it's everybody has to agree and amplify this issue this week. And everybody get on the Epstein did nothing wrong bandwagon and go, and everybody get on the we must protect our public parks bandwagon, and everybody has to tweet that for a fucking full week, and then we move on to the next thing. Who did that? That was current thinging. That was the left. That was what the old Twitter was, just the other way. It was always every liberal agree and amplify this thing, and it was like, okay, I get why it's right. We're in power now. Like Zero HP makes a good point. You got to govern. You got to run it your way. Yeah, but I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're right. You got to govern, but you also and the thing is, the current thing is in our heads, right? Because to get another example, let's get examples of actual capital W winning. Again, I'll use a Soviet example. When the Soviets won, you knew exactly what poets you had to read. If it was garbage, everyone had to talk about it. You had to talk about it. Not only just read it, you had to actually pretend to actually give literary depth. You had to go attend all the plays. And let's say when 100 years ago, in the 1920s, back when all these politics was winning and actually establishing and again asserting space. What's the right wing? What's the MAGA artist that every leftist has to at least engage with? You know what I mean? There isn't one. There isn't one right now. Yeah, I mean, other than the Rolling Stones piece. Yeah, again, it's as a collective. It's a little baby of what it's supposed to be. When it's a vibe shift, with a proper capital V vibe shift, the closest thing is of SCS. The closest thing is basically Yarvin with the New Yorker piece.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing where we're forcing their version of academics to at least read some of his blogs. That's the closest thing.
Yeah. Did you read that? Did you read that?
Yeah, and of course that was much more of a classic hit piece thing. It was overall the very fact that New Yorker has to cover him. It's still a win, I guess you could say. The fact that it had.
What did you make of it? Yeah, what did you make of the Yarvin piece?
It was a mix of, clearly they had a bone to pick. I mean, from my understanding, the journal in question spent a long time with Yarvin, at least hanging out with him, discussing with him, so forth. But at the end of Yarvin, from my understanding, was actually very amicable to them and tried to actually get them to understand and be quote unquote empathetic, and try to really level with them. But at the end of the day, of course, they tried their best to twist the knife at his back for all intents and purposes, as journals are tend to do, right?
Yeah.
But the best thing about that piece is at least they chose a non-cringy picture of him at the very least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people did think that was cringy because he was like kind of like off to the side, like what was that about? Yeah, I think what happened there is Yarvin had hoped to change her mind, right? That was he wanted to the classic story of the undercover who falls in love. No, I don't mean literally fall in love, but I'm just saying like the classic story of the undercover who becomes enamored by the ideology of the bad guys that he's following, and then he can't really let it go ever, right?
Yeah.
That's the story that Yarvin was going for, and I think Yarvin realized about halfway through, oh shit, that's not happening. Like I think he realized, because even in the piece, and I'm just totally, I don't have any insider information about this, but I'm saying like in the piece she says, oh, then he started texting me like, I'm going to have to remove my cooperation, like something like that. And it was like, you could tell, oh shit, he realized she was not down. Like she was she was going to skewer him, she was going to get him. And, that being said, I mean, who really cares? Like I think that was part of a mandate that they have they're switching everything as I believe this, they're switching everything over to, no kings, they're switching everything over to we're the party of the common man, and these people are, the people who want to enslave you again. Yeah, so I think that
dead billionaires basically told.
Yeah, dead billionaires, exactly. They want dead billionaires, and so they were trying to paint him as, oh, he's going to get into power and he's going to, enslave the common man. He's going to liquidate the blacks, and I think that's part of the propaganda push that they're putting on him. But
yeah, but her own piece contradicts it, because there's a wonderful scene where he goes to Renard Camus' castle. Right, it really humanizes Yarvin. Right. Yarvin can come off as spurgy, right? I love his work. His old Uncroft Reservation stuff has a big impact on me. But when you see him talking about his children and actually leveling with Renard Camus and gushing over French history, it really humanizes him. So even her own content of her own piece backfired on her in a very bizarre way. Like if she was in too deep to not write a somewhat decent piece on him. So you know what I mean?
Well, I think that she was truly. I mean, that was vicious, right? That was vicious. That was a vicious piece, because it was really digging to the core of somebody, and really not trying to tangle with the good sides of it, right?
Right.
Like it was really fucked up, because it was like she got really deep with them. She's hanging out with them in Europe. She's hanging out with them in all kinds of places, and then she doesn't even try to understand the guy. She does not tangle. Like at least James Pogue, what's great about Pogue's work is he tries to see both sides of it. Or he tries to actually report in an objective fashion. Whereas she was like, again, she was truly a double agent. She was embedded for the purpose of destruction. Right. That was why she was there. And that's what everybody thought this guy was going to do to us. Everybody thought John McDermott was going to destroy us, and I was very worried that he was. I thought that, I thought he was going to do some gotcha shit, but he really didn't.
Yeah, and the thing is, we need to build upon this. This is a victory, but we can't just rest on our laurels. We have to build up on this victory. A good W win is that a bunch of housewives or a bunch of relatively hip young people are going out to coffee or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, you remember the Rolling Stone piece? I actually read the Adam book, the Mixtape Hyperborea thing. It's actually a pretty good book. What was your thoughts on it? Once it's organically brought up, or quote unquote organically brought up, like, yeah, I actually read that guy's book. That kind of thing. You got to build upon that victory."
You know what I think is happening, and I think it's it's good. Of course, I can't see this, but my friend Jacob Savage wrote a piece called "The Death of the White Male Writer" or whatever in Compact Magazine.
Right.
You've obviously seen this, and it's really fucking good. It's a great piece. It has incontrovertible facts. It has really beautiful analysis in it. It's not just a hot take piece. It's an actually really fucking good piece.
Yeah.
And in it, he doesn't. It's not like he's whining and saying "Oh, where's the white thing?" He's literally making the argument that what's sort of sad is that. Here it is, The Vanishing White Male Writer. I really recommend this to everybody.
I think I remember reading this. I remember this.
And he's a Princeton guy. He's a total, guy who really knows what he's talking about. And the argument he's making is not that, the go woke, go broke. He's saying that it's a tragedy that the interior life of a white guy today is just non-discussed. Right? There's no novel today of the experience of a white guy. And people went crazy for this because of all these different reasons. The reasons he lists is either you're trying to ignore the woke or you're getting too into the woke. And either way, you're not really reflecting real life, right?
Right.
So, this got picked up. It went under discussed. New York Times just did a profile thing on Jacob or on his piece that came out almost concurrently with the Rolling Stone piece. So I think what we're seeing is culture realizing that the perspective of a white guy has basically been kind of lost. There really is no literature coming out that contains the perspective of a white guy in 2025, a real one. And I think that the reason this Rolling Stone thing resonated, the reason this reporter got interested in it, because he is a white guy writing, right? So he's there's got to be somewhere where these stories are being told, and he kind of found a place where people are at least attempting to self-publish stories of what it's really like to be a white guy in today's world, right?
Right.
And so I think that it's weird because it's it's almost a concept in search of a substance. It's not like this stuff is burbling from the surface naturally and people are going crazy for the new book from our scene, right? That's not happening. It's more that people are noticing the gap, and our guys are kind of filling the gap because it's just the pieces haven't actually connected yet. And what I'm quoted in here as saying is, I want to create a world in which we have a ramp to the mainstream for our guys in our scene. My biggest problem with our guys' writing is it's shit.
Oh God, yes.
It fucking sucks. Yeah. It's no good. But again, that's not that big of a deal. It's early rap sucked. The early parts of this shit, a lot of times it sucks, And so I think that this is actually the spark at the beginning of something, but what we need to keep doing in total contravention of the advice that we're getting from, some of these voices that are now, in charge of right-wing culture, who are saying, hey, let's behave, let's make woke art just on the right. Let's make, sitcoms about anti-trans. What we need to keep doing is making good shit.
Right.
You know, that's what we have. That's what I'm worried is going to stop happening. We got to keep memeing, keep podcasting, keep fucking hammering these books out there, because now we've got a little bit of fertile ground. And if the other guys are not going to make anything good anymore, somebody's got to, as you say, somebody has to carry the torch of creating good shit, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's where our basically our two fields kind of align here, is that gap is going to be filled either way. You know, your job is basically to pimp it out, make it look sexy, make it look clean. Our job is to make sure it's worth it making it look sexy to begin with. You know what I mean? As book reviewers, like, you know, Lord knows the books we reviewed so far. I mean, me and David and Capitalismo, like, what we reviewed is basically what we're trying to look for is, like, we don't want to look for like, to get your foot in the door, you have to be right wing in general, right? Because the whole void is that it's not leftist. Is it from a white dude who's actually honest by his experiences? Like, that's not your winning ticket. That's just your foot in the door. You know, you can't just get on just like, you know, I'm a straight white guy, and sometimes I say retard from time to time. Like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. You know, that's every dude in Austin on 6th Street for all the I recently went to, you know, Sam Hyde just did a premiere of his season 2 of World Peace, right? And that the cliche about the Austin dude is basically true. You know, they say retard from time to time, and that's about it. They have no real any flavor. But Hyde does. If you look at the early right wing scene, you got, of course, early Sam Hyde. You know, Murdoch. You know, that's something I don't think you get palatable for anyone. That's a deep cut right wing art. But in terms of actually filling in that gap, if we don't do quality control, if you're like, okay, there's a gap, okay, quick.
Well, but it's not quality control. Sorry, keep going.
No, pop off.
It's not quality control. It's so funny because it's like there's these twin flames going on right here. There's this guy, John McDermott, who's the journalist, and then there's us, or not me, but there's these guys.
Right.
And they have the same fucking problem. John McDermott, talented young reporter. He has a craving to report. I was one of these guys. I wrote for LA Weekly and Vice, exactly similar shit like this, except none of this existed then. So I just wrote about, culture. I was going around and writing culture, but it was always from a slightly right-wing perspective, which I later got in trouble for. I said I'm the only person ever in mainstream press to write a negative review of Kendrick Lamar, which I did, which got me in huge trouble at that time.
That would have gotten you crucified. Was this what during the To Pimp a Butterfly era?
Yes, this was To Pimp a Butterfly, exactly.
Oh wow!
Yeah. It still exists. You could do it. It's called Nobody Hates Kendrick Lamar. But my problem was I had a lot of talent, or I don't know, maybe not a lot of talent. Maybe I had marginal talent, but I had a lot of desire. Right? I would go out. I'd spend tons of my time and money exploring culture, just like this guy John does. But I had because it was Longhouse editors who were mostly women. The guys would always get pushed out. I talk shit about women. Actually, the best editor I ever had at LA Weekly, the most based and the coolest, who got it the most, was the former editor-in-chief, and she was a woman. But, she got pushed out by the woke type people. And what did they want? They didn't care about quality. They wanted to care about the quality was completely out the window. They wanted to write about the Latinx lesbian roller skate band, of the East Side. And it had nothing to do with how good the writing was. That just completely went out the window. So there was a whole generation. If somebody had had a fucking brain, if we had a talent development program that was in any way real, somebody would have taken me, whose articles always perform well. They weren't any good. I was a shit writer. I'd never really done it, but I had, the spark of a skill, right? That's why I got published in there to begin with. They would have taken me and they would have grown me into a good writer. That's what would have happened. That's what's supposed to happen. Every great writer from history had a extremely close relationship with their editor. Right. You hear about these great editors from history. Those people are completely gone. They're replaced by Longhouse, Harridan with a journalism degree from Columbia. That's why Columbia exists, to crank out middle manager journalism women, right? That's why it fucking is there. So, and they need jobs. They have to work somewhere. So, they've been guaranteed a job, so they have to be allowed to work somewhere, right? But those people don't know what quality is, and they can't grow talent. So somebody like John, he's just stuck. It's really unfair because he's got some, he's got the like beginnings of talent and he's got the desire, he does the work, but no one is there to make him into a good writer. Nobody is there to put the pressure on him every day and say, hey, this sucks ass. This sucks ass. Try harder, try harder, try harder, try harder. Without that, talent cannot grow. Imagine an NBA. Imagine a sport. Imagine a sport where a guy just shows up and he doesn't have some guy yelling in his face for 20 years. He's never going to get pro, right? And so John has the opposite problem. He is in the system, but he doesn't have anybody to grow his talent, right? Because none of the women who are his editors are serious about it. They're only serious about hating Trump, right? And then on our side, we have no editors either. We have nobody to edit us because we're just shitting stuff out in the world, and there's nobody there to say this is absolute fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
Try again.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of what we try to do on our podcast. It's like we've gotten criticized before, like, oh, how dare you be like, we're trying to advance the movement, that kind of thing. It's like the thing is, if you put out dog shit and we're trying to say you're the best that we can be, like the thing is, we can't say we're the edgy punk rock kids anymore. I use this metaphor discussing the piece, like especially with Lomez appearing on the New York Times podcast. Like, well, back when we were edgy, like, oh, the classic punk rock thing is, like, oh, they won't let us have this venue. Well, guess what? We're going to perform on the street. And it's a classic punk rock thing. But when you're let in the venue, once you have, okay, it's your turn to do public speaking, and you literally just shit your pants on stage, you're becoming a laughingstock. You justify your deplatforming. That's the kind of thing, the whole spurginess. Listen, like the e-right and online right-wing culture was made by Spurgs. It was made by Spurgs and people with crippling autism and so forth, these kind of things. And that's our engine. They are our engine. But, there's a reason why the hood of a car isn't see-through, right? You're not supposed to see the engine. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the whole point, the engine, it's dirty, it's blocky, you got the cables inside there. The hood is supposed to look sleek, it's supposed to look smooth. You look at the old 1950s car, the whole point is like Art Deco smoothness. It's not like these little plastic toy modern cars. There's a reason why Art Deco still has such a stronghold. Of some of the e-right tech guys, at least some of them, like Mark Andreessen, they appreciate the Art Deco aesthetic at the very least. And yeah, it's old, but at least it has some power. It takes up space. When you look at the classic Art Deco or like the futurists, like Umberto Bacano, I think, or something like these times, it takes up space. It looks weird, but not weird like in a cringe gay way, but weird as in, like, this thing looks like it's going to fucking kill me, and that's awesome. That kind of thing. There's a sense of speed and energy and power. And that's the kind of thing. It's like you can't just go out on stage and spurg at people and Yarvin can do that, but because Yarvin talks in spaces, there's almost exclusively like theory and politics and very poli-sci. And Lomez can do the aesthetic critique on the New York Times. But in terms who is the sexy, the third element of this is the sexy art dude.
Yeah.
Who can appeal? Like, listen, oh, I don't want to watch. Like, listen, he was funny, he was entertaining, even though I 100% disagree with him. Everyone wants to attract the girl that is completely their opposite, but you gotta admit, fuck, he's funny, or fuck, he's actually entertaining, or he's actually attractive for some way. That's the kind of thing. You gotta hide your engine. The engine's to me is bigger. We need our autists. We need our Spurgs, right? They're our fuel.
Wait, because they're the engine? Wait, who's the engine is the Spurgs? What is the engine in this metaphor?
The engine is the Spurgs. Because
the Spurgs is the engine.
Yeah, because if you look at the E-Right or even Yarvin in the back, the reason why he's, the whole Dark Enlightenment thing was, NRX, neo-reactionary bloggers in 2014. All these are the blogosphere. Or 4chan, a classic Twitter take is like, all cultures downstream from 4chan. Made by some weeb in 2004. Spurgs are the engine, right? Debating and critiquing minute little details of political theory. But the thing is, you need to take that fuel and you actually need to harness it into something that's actually smooth, capable, and confident, right? That exudes power, right? Because it's like a car with a leaky engine, right? The oil's just getting all over the place. Basically, it's not productive. It needs to be focused. It needs to be harnessed. Right, and I'm not saying, because if you notice, you mentioned the old editors, and the difference, like you mentioned that managerialism is inherently leftist. The form of managerialism, the shape of the medium of managerialism is intrinsically leftist. If you look at an old 1920s, Maxwell Perkins is a great example of this. Editor of Fitzgerald and editor of Hemingway. If you look at the old letters that F. Scott Fitzgerald used to have, they were very blunt and blatant. like Fitzgerald, like, hey, listen, this last guy you published, he's a retard, he's an idiot, he can't write worth shit. You're gonna have to edit him for. You basically have to hold his hand and spoon feed him, right? They're very honest. Like with modern, on the E right in particular, we're so scared of critiquing. You have like this big. There's this thing with Orc City. Are you familiar with that little meme going
what's
on?
that?
So this guy on Twitter was critiquing this video game, Hideo Kojima, and it turns out he's an indie pub author, and he writes slop fantasy, and he's like, oh, the Orc City of the Orcish people, and the elves is very generic, the most basic, like even 1950s children would think this fantasy is just complete slop and derivative and cringe. And he's like, oh, you can't expect quality from indie authors. It's cruel. He's based. He's on our side. And I'm like, especially as a reviewer, the whole point is reviewing this. The whole point is we're not supposed to waste our time.
Yeah, dude, as soon as somebody starts fucking saying, oh, but he's on our side, it's like you are a cuck fucking lib.
Absolutely.
That is the least right-wing fucking thing in the world. Being like, oh, don't counter-signal him. We should be fucking counter-signaling the shit out of each other. I hate that shit, man. It's so fucking anti-right-wing. It's like, it is, and this is like my big disagreement. It's like, you can't, if the fucking managers are there and we're living in this world of managerialism where it's, ex-trad girl boss is your manager because you know what? She's earned it and she's a trad girl boss, but you know what? She's a right-wing trad girl boss. No, that doesn't fucking work, man. Because that same I've fucking worked with so many of these. That same trad girl boss, do this test. Go test. Next time that trad girl boss gives you something that's a complete fucking piece of shit, which it will be, I mean, it doesn't mean everything they do is bad. I'm just saying eventually they're going to give you something bad. Say to them, this is complete trash, kill yourself. Right. Say that to that girl boss. She is going to fucking never forgive you for that. And if she comes back and she starts whining, tell her stop whining. I've done this. It doesn't matter how fucking base she is. You're fucking done. You are fucking done. Unless she's a very unique woman, which does exist, who cares enough about the craft to go back and be like, you know what, I'm going to get better. But that's going to happen very rarely because managerialism is the problem, because she's going to think, well, what do you mean? I have every right to be here. I have the right credentials. I've been elevated to this position and I am now a manager and I'm a right-wing manager. Therefore, my ideas must be good. No. That's not how it fucking works. You have to purge that whole shit. And you have to get back to 5 minutes ago where a crazy director could say to an actor or to a writer, you're a complete piece of shit. Fuck you. This sucks. Do it again. Right. You can't say that anymore until or let's put it in the non-artistic context. When white people in the suburbs had enough fucking gumption to, if a bunch of fucking people from the hood came to their pool and started destroying their neighborhood, would beat the shit out of them or point guns at them. That's right. What's missing.
And the problem with that, it's not even gendered anymore. The men act like this anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't want. Everybody thinks I have it out for women. The only reason I am even bringing up women is because it is a feminine way of being, and it's I don't know.
No, you're 100% right.
It's hard to articulate, but I don't know.
No, what I'm saying is you should expect that from women. Like, no shit. Like, water is wet. Women, as soon as you get the mildest criticism, are going to turn that into an absolute vendetta against you. Absolutely.
They just get away with so much shit because of managerialism. They get away with shit, and the enforcement mechanisms go down to the level of how you should treat women. And you should fucking treat women well. That's the thing. You should treat women better than you treat men. This is the whole fucking problem. The problem is that a man, deep in our hearts, we don't want to yell at a woman. We don't want to tell a woman her shit sucks. We don't want to do that. We want to be like, hey, we're here to protect you. We're nice, whatever. So we have built into us this natural inability to come down harshly upon a woman. And they also have the expectation of reverse. But that makes them into a child, right? Yeah. Whereas men, when we're together, We don't fucking have that at all. You know, there is no, we don't treat each other like children. We don't give each other the benefit of the doubt. We say, no, you have to do fucking better. And that's what's, the whole talent mechanism is destroyed because of that. And we got to get that shit back, man, you know?
Right, and the thing is, we have to be hard. I would say this: counter signaling, critiquing people on your side isn't the same as sabotage. There is such thing as sabotage. There is, absolutely. Right? I mean, Alice Kachuda, everyone was mad because she got a little pudgy and doughy. Like,
Right.
didn't the reason why she turned on the right was because people were making jokes? She got a little pudgy after her birth
Right.
or some shit.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know
It's
if
ridiculous.
that's true, but it's just like, yeah, because a woman, think of how difficult is a woman to say, shut up, you fat fuck. And I would say, if I had a fat guy who worked for me, I would say that to them once a day, at least.
Right.
Like, it's just like, that's how you are. And you have to deal with it. And you have to
Right.
get better,
Right. And the thing is, when men are raised in the longhouse, even as of course a dissident, you replicate how you're supposed to interact with groups instead of like the German term is a Männerbund. Instead of like you're supposed to be a war band, dude. We're supposed to. The reason why I'm treating you like shit is so when you deal with shitty situations, you can actually take it and improve yourself. There's this wonderful story. You're a film guy. There's this great story of Orson Welles. He was doing a narration for Ernest Hemingway's. Ernest Hemingway sold one of his books, I think, Farewell to Arms, to be a picture, and Hemingway was trying to write him a narration, and Orson Welles is like, I don't like this, and and Hemingway's like, some fat faggot from an art theater trying to tell me my writing stinks, and they start, according to Orson Welles, they start fist fighting. They start trying to throw a fist in the dark, and Orson Welles decades later is like, I love that man anyway. Even though they're literally beating the shit out of each other over this. Right.
Well, and actually, the act of art in the mind of a man a lot of times has the sort of mind impression of boxing. Like, did you ever? There's an interview with Hemingway shortly before he died, and he's just drunk as fuck all the time, and he's like shadow boxing.
Yeah.
And he just like spends all his time like drinking and shadow boxing and like saying, "Oh, I'm gonna fucking come for this motherfucker," like talking about some competitive guy. Bukowski was the same way. He talked constantly about like boxing his competitors, Yeah. So there's like a violence to it. And this is something I really, really matters to me a lot with Will, my agency, which is that I insist on creating an environment where we can box each other like that, where we can fucking be absolutely cruel with each other, because I really believe that type of insanity, that's the only way to make great shit. You have to fucking set up that type of environment, and because without it, it's just managerial bullshit. It's just like, you need to behave and you need to behave, and we need to think about saying the right thing, and all that shit.
Yeah, your friends are supposed to be your harshest critics, and all the greats, the things they would say publicly in reviews of their friends' books was fucking brutal, absolutely brutal, publicly too.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
Even from like a based E-Right child, like, damn, you're supposed to like help a dude out and sell his book.
Right. We have the ability to do that. We should be shitting on each other's books horribly. We should be writing like eviscerating takedowns of each other's shit. And instead we're all like, no, he's my friend, so I'm going to write this nice thing. Like, this is why I try to fucking tell people the truth. When they send me their books, I'm just like, I'm going to fucking tell you the truth about this thing.
Right. Yeah, it's the same thing here. We get DMs, or requests to review books and stuff like this, and our whole point is like, we're going to be honest with you. Like the Times Square thing. Like, what's the one good piece of art other than the podcasting, auditorial stuff aside? There's not even any music from Times Square. It's all podcast stuff. Honor Levy, I would love her to make her my Jewish au pair and everything like that. She's a beautiful woman. Weird hobbit feet. Weird hobbit feet. Have you seen her feet? Very weird hobbit feet.
What is this obsession with? Is she like, people love Honor Levy what's the deal with Honor Levy?
It's just something that deeply, if you look at her facial structure, have you seen a picture of her face?
I've seen her face in real life.
There's something very Habsburgian with the cheeks, the forehead. Other than the feet, if you look at a picture of her feet, you can reason why like the Mandarins bound their women's feet. She has hobbit feet, but I love her face. There's something very aristocratic about her skull structure. But the whole point, the whole point, my critique is that her book was mid.
She's got hobbit feet.
She has hobbit feet. She has hobbit feet.
That's why she's famous.
her parents should have bound them like the Chinese mandarins. But the whole point of my critique is that it was deeply, deeply mid. It was a mid. It was boring. It was safe. It would have been edgy 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And after like a couple years of Diamond Square existing, the best piece is very mid teenage girl fiction.
Well, this is why you got to love female writers from history. This is why they're so much better, because they're going against. This is why they're so good. This is why Ayn Rand is so fucking great, because she's going against the diamonds have to have pressure. That's what we lack. We lack fucking pressure.
Right.
And it's like, she's fighting against pressure. It has to be good. She has to be good. Right. Whereas now you don't have to be good, because nobody reads it anyway.
And people are so brittle. Once you apply pressure, they break and they shatter. One guy we reviewed, he wrote this book, Jack Galopians. He was trying to go for like a Dan Baltic nutcracker. Like it was like right post. Yeah, and parts of the book were funny, but where it basically says like, dude, this is just cringe. It feels stale. It's like when you go to get anti-woke comedian, you're like, pronouns and trigger words. Like, I'm a gamer-gator. I'm like a Zoomer. I heard this when I was 14. It was twice as funny back then. And when you see modern, I paid money to see this show, and I'm getting stuff that was regurgitated from a decade ago. You know what I mean? It makes it cringe. Like, as Nutcracker, despite taking place of that era, it feels timeless because Dan has a style. He has a voice, right? You read it because of Dan's style, right? Even though it's kind of dated, the Pussy Hat riots or the Pussy Hat parade and so forth. It's taking place in a very particular time, just like Mixtape is taking place in a very particular time. Right, but the actual mood and the style and the presentation, Mixtape could take place 10 years ago or 10 years in the future, right? But the mood of Adam's writing is there. If you look at, have you ever seen Adam's paintings at all?
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of them. Yeah.
You can even though if you look at his paintings, despite the meme of Mixtape being the music of the era and the nostalgia and so forth, if you look at his paintings and you reflect on what you've read on Mixtape, the pathos, the mood, the feeling is there despite it being a completely different medium, right? You can feel Adam in both the paintings and the writing, right? That's the whole point. If you're trying just to own the libs or make something, if you're trying to fill that gap, the gap you mentioned earlier of just being anti-woke slop, it makes. That's the whole point of quality control, right? That's the whole point. Or not even quality control, quality preservation, quality increasing, ascending quality. Listen, that gap's going to be filled either way. You want your best. You want your top guys. You want guys with swagger when they walk, guys who stomp when they walk, you guys with confidence. Confidence that was forged back in the day when they were punk. They should have twice the confidence when they're out in the spotlight. You know what I mean? Once they are allowed to have the venues, once they're allowed to have that stages. And that's the thing. Like a good example of this, Mike Ma. You remember Mike Ma, harassment architecture?
Yeah, what happened to him?
Yeah,
that's Mike Ma.
He was real punk rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was very punk rock for his time, right? He was kind of a heartthrob. All the ladies liked him. What happened to him?
Yeah, Laura. You ever seen a Laura Loomer video with him?
Yeah. Check out my big Ashkenazi titties or something. Yeah. Or something like that.
Yes, he would have killed it, and that's the thing, and that's the sad thing.
Yeah, so but where did he go? What happened to him?
I don't know. He did.
I tried to get him to work for me once.
Really?
Failed. Yeah.
But did he just ghost you, or
he just didn't respond? Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad to say because right now would have been a perfect time for him. He would have killed it in New Ritual Press. I think. And the thing is, Matthew Pegas and Adam are very honest when they say they're inspired by.
I mean, even Zero HP, man. Like Zero HP, incredible stylist. And his shit's so good, dude. He's got such a thing, It's like as an artist, you got to have that Tacos also has this. You got to have that trick, and that trick has to be. You need tricks. You need your bag of tricks, right? And the great artists have bags of tricks. ZHP has great tricks. He has a few tricks that he does, and they really work. But where's it at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where did it go? He had so much great shit, What did happen to Mike Ma?
I think he just basically, died. If you're not posting on Twitter, if you have a talent like this, I would just say he died. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. He's probably somewhere in Belize or somewhere in the Congo, or playing basketball somewhere at this point. I think he just kind of gave up on Twitter life or e-life, basically.
But why? So strange. So strange.
And the thing is, and he would have killed it because we're all his children in a lot of sense. We're deeply inspired by him. The cover of Harassment Architecture.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
Fantastic cover.
Although I think it was MGMT. I once did like the root of that book, that design. I found it's actually based on like a punk rock band from like 2000 or something called like Hog Pig Killer or something like that. Yeah, I once. Yeah, I found it. What was that? Pig Killer album. It was something like that. It was really cool. It was like yellow, that yellow thing. And then MGMT. I can't remember if that was. I think MGMT actually did it before Mike Ma. Because that MGMT album had basically the same kind of. Yeah, I fucking can't remember. But yeah, somebody's asking, why is there no pressure? There's no pressure for all the same reason why we keep losing these people. There's no infrastructure. In order to have pressure, you need infrastructure, just like in real life. If you don't have pressure, if you don't have a structure around you, you can't create pressure. And that's what we don't have. We don't have, as I said, on the John McDermott mainstream Rolling Stone journalist side, he has no pressure because on top of him is fluffy managers. And they don't exert pressure for quality. They exert pressure for behavior. And trust me, I was a fucking copywriter, creative director in the mainstream. I never got pressure to improve creatively. I always mistook the two because I thought they can't possibly be pressuring me to behave, right? But actually, the entire time, all they cared about was my behavior. They didn't care about my quality of work, even though I made them millions of dollars sometimes. That did not matter. The managers do not care about the quality. They care about how well you behave. That's what the Longhouse means to me.
Right.
On the other hand, you have us, who are a bunch of assholes sitting around self-publishing into the fucking ether. There's nobody above us either. That's what I'm trying to create with Will, man. Will's different because it's about commercialism, but commercialism is how artists get paid. But like at Will, there has to be heavy pressure from the top, not about your fucking behavior, but about the quality of your work and your ability to deliver it,
Right. Yeah.
Like every great writer from history, they talk about their editor. Yeah. When, what is it? When they say, remember that Cormac McCarthy, I'll stop blabbering, but that Cormac McCarthy piece that came out recently,
yeah, it was a great piece. It was a
great piece. And I actually the perfect example. The kid who wrote that piece was cringy at times, but it was a lot of talent there. He cared. And what's going to happen to that guy? He's just going to fucking disappear because he has nobody there to pick him out of the sky and say, "Hey, you've got ability. Come here. I'm going to scream in your face for 20 years. You'll come out better." Anyway, in that piece, the woman, the muse of Cormac McCarthy, said there was only one person that Cormac took seriously, or one person whose calls he respectfully took, and it was his editor. What was his name? He was a famous editor.
His name escapes me as well, but I think he was also editor of Faulkner. I think.
He edited Faulkner. And it's like that person is just gone. Right, they've been replaced by a woman who paid $200,000 to get a Columbia degree in journalism or writing, and that person has no fucking idea what good is. Albert Erskine, I think was his name. Or no, was that it? Maybe it was a different guy. Albert Erskine? Yeah, I think it was Albert something. Anyway, sorry. Okay, I've been talking too much. You go.
Well, yeah. Well, on your point of having people put pressure, we do have people who put pressure on us, but for Longhouse reasons. A great example of it is Chris Rufo's pay pig mistress. You remember that famous scene? He got a little too rowdy on a timeline, and she publicly reprimanded him like a bitch mother. The mom who pulls you by the ear in front of your kids.
Yeah, Susie Shofar, right? Shofar. Yeah, and it was like, you do better. Do better.
But the thing is, as your boss, you should do that in DMs or something. She wanted to humiliate him. She wanted to take his balls off, basically.
Yeah, right. Well, and this is exactly the fucking issue. Is we're all being controlled by this huge mistake, which was to, allow this type of person into the power structure. Anyway, sorry. What were you saying?
I'm thinking of actually anything institutionally effective, because like I said, we're effective. Right wing at its best is when we're fragmented. like a network state model. The land has all these ideas of like the old school NRX theories that where the right is inherently fractured. The more fractured we are, actually, the more we're at each other's throats, the better we are, actually, in terms of at least in terms of quality, not necessarily in terms of politics. And in terms of aesthetics, yet again, I can think of a handful of scenes. Artistically, they're doing good. Like I said, Rachel's Event, Passage, New Ritual Press. But yet again, they're not okay. We got one victory. How do we build up upon this? Who's our people? Who's our hype man? Who's all of these things?
Yeah.
We're not prepared for fragmentation. We're trying to make one big thing, but we can't. The only thing is the theory cells. Is the poly-sci types. It's gonna be very cringe, but like what the Claremont Institute, they're the only ones who are effective. But they're a think tank, or they're a very effective think tank overall.
Right.
But they're the only ones who have somewhat of a clue, I think, in terms of actually effective organization. But they don't give a fuck about the arts. Like you and I, what we do is something cool, edgy, and hip in terms of artistry. We need something that's as effective and a focus as Claremont, because they pick out talent for the next generation of
yeah, but right, but then they sort of turn them into like pundits, right? That's kind of right. Like that's yeah. No, but I see your point. I think you're saying like they do have that locked down, but they just sort of use it to create pundits.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like with Chris Rufo, like he had that Chris Burnett or something. I forget his last.
Yeah. Well, I wrote about. I talked about this a lot in the last stream. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great example. Like the whole point of being an effective artist or being an effective commentator is that you have to have what is my next step to victory. Well, you gotta groom your successors, for example. Like listen, you have to have an eye for talent. I always say this with the Suge Knight of the early 20th century was, of course, Ezra Pound, a very famous poet. He found William.
Yes, Pound, exactly, right? That's what we're missing. Or, hey, Gertrude Stein.
True.
She was also one of these people, very much so.
Yeah, I think the reason why Ezra Pound's more of a flex is because he was a full-blown fascist. He was a schizo. He was a.
Right.
He was
well,
a
that happened later, right? He had like a meltdown later.
He was a full groiper at the end of the day, but he was still obsessed with trying to pimp out his friends' work to the day he died. He had an eye for talent, and he was like a pit bull. He is not only was he trying to get people good reviews, the whole point, the full process, I'm gonna get you good reviews, and I'm gonna go get your paintings, your books sold. I'm gonna get you financially set up. He really was the Suge Knight of the early modernist scene. And the reason why they didn't hang him for being pro-fascist, because everyone in the literary scene owed something to Ezra Pound. In some way, they literally owned their livelihoods. Everyone in the literati literally owed Ezra Pound something. And the thing is,
so how did he do it? Do you know how did Ezra Pound find talent?
Oh, he was just very well connected to magazines and to people who ran art exhibits. He would get a bunch of his friends in England. They had this little art event called Vorticism. It was a right wing, they made they actually made things, sculptures, paintings, a very, very early modernist pseudo-fascism thing. And he got them an exhibit in fucking New York, even though they've been around for less than a year. And not only got 70% of their paintings sold by one guy, I think John Quinn or John Parker, a New York tycoon. He was a very charismatic guy. He knew how to move money around, surprisingly enough. Yeah, he was surprisingly really good at it. Despite being a poet fag and start being very, very a romanticist, he was very good at making connections. Mm-hmm. He had a very rare talent, despite him always being somewhat of a spurg. He was a very charismatic spurg. And that's the problem with us, is that you get one guy who can write. But other than writing, he has no clue how to market himself. He has no clue. And the thing is, people who would market him, the fact that the best right-wing talent people are people who are antisocial. When you're online, when you're raised online, or you hone your craft online, you're kind of like a xenomorph. You have acid in your blood. You're antisocial by default, right? So it's hard to pimp you out. It's like what's my favorite term? What normies use is terminally online. It's a very fascinating word when you think about it, because they associate being online with the idea of something this cancerous thing that eats your innards. You know what I mean? The idea of touching grass. It's terminal. Yeah. Right? It's something that is completely alien, that you cannot see. It's this unseen other literally eating you from the inside. It's a very Landian point. It's like his Fang Numina concept, but it's literally internalized. And the problem with what your job is you got people who are spurgy, but you have to kind of pimp. You got to put the smile on the cancer's tumor. You know what I mean? That's what E-Right is. The most, the most productive people are the most antisocial in some ways. So you gotta get people who are antisocial, who have that hard edge about them. Mike Mall on the day, used to say, some guy would do an interview. He was like, "Hey, what do you think of people who smoke weed?" And Mike Mall would just look at the camera and say, "I think we should just fucking execute them." Honestly, like that. McDermott had a blast with him, but I'm not sure if he a very productive blast. But you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. Or like those great early Bob Dylan interviews where he's just like overtly hostile.
Yeah.
To the you ever seen No Direction Home or whatever? That this is one that actually in the '60s where he also goes after Donovan, where he like literally like has a rap battle with Donovan where he says your career's over because he sings "It's All Over, Baby Blue." Like no, totally. Or punk rock, or black metal. All those people are constantly killing each other, or rap. It's like. Yeah, and I think we have this notion. This is why it's like the insidiousness of like right-wing art, because it's we're missing what right-wing actually means. It's like we're missing what the actual meaning of it and like the purpose of it is. And you're right, man. It's like we really like we got to get to that point where we have the impresario layer. The impresario layer is vital, and that's why stuff keeps kind of like popping down, because that layer is very undeveloped on all sides, and I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and we like you said, if you got to win, like with I'll even do an American example with the Civil War. After the Civil War, how do we celebrate our victory? We'll put Abraham Lincoln on a literal fucking throne in Washington D.C. Literally bundles of fasces as his armrests.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about the Lincoln Monument. Why are there the fascist things beneath his arms?
Oh, that used to be a republic. I mean, republic as in like the government form of republicanism. It used to be a symbol all the time back in the day. Yeah, it's from Rome, but the thing is, it's supposed to be or even with FDR, they used to have military parades. They used to have a giant marble head of FDR's.
Oh yeah, I saw that picture.
Yeah. Why the fuck didn't Trump have that during the military parade? Why do we have a giant? Again, the perfect parade float would have been the fist up in the air, American flag in the background. That would have been a perfect. It's asserting that Trump is bringing forth the anniversary of our renewal, rebirth, rejuvenation, right? And that's the thing. We'll have our little right wing parade. Oh, it's just a bunch of guys, some of them wearing old American uniforms, and that's basically it. It was a nothing burger. It was a wet fart of a parade. There was nothing rejuvenating about it. I'm glad that it happened, right? I'm glad at least it happened.
Yeah, but here's where I'll slightly disagree in that, and we can end on this. The feed is the landscape right now. I don't want to say it's all Twitter, because Twitter is always ultimately less important than it seems. Because I've seen this in real life. The engagement on Twitter is far larger than the payoff. And I would say that Instagram and Facebook are the opposite. Like Instagram and Facebook actually, or like YouTube, when something goes big on there, it's much bigger than when something goes big on Twitter a lot of times, because it's just more normie friendly, right? Like usually something has to have escape velocity, it has to go onto those other platforms. If it stays just on Twitter, not that many people are going to know about it. Like your normal everyday household person is not going to know.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's just Twitter, but the feed, being all the feeds, that is where to build your chaos monument. And that's why that's what I'm saying. Like if we lose the feed, if we lose the ability to make based shit on the feed, we've lost everything. What happens in real life will follow. Real life will follow. But that's why I'm actually very impressed with what the White House does on Twitter. I think it's cool, and I think they need to keep being savage in that way. And I guarantee you, they have 3 women right now who went to fucking all the right schools and have all the right credentials telling them, you guys really need to tone down these posts on the White House. I guarantee you they have that happening right now.
Absolutely.
I guarantee you BAP has somebody in his ear right now saying, you could tune it down. Be better. And that's the fucking problem. And I agree. We need to have big, bold, fucking amazing things that take up space. That's totally fucking true. But the one space we fucking have is the feed. We have Twitter. We won the meme war, right? We can't cede that territory now. That territory now that we won has to get 10 times more powerful and more filled with base shit. Especially because the tech people are all base now. Because the feed is the art. That is the art of our time. That's where everybody's eyes are. They're not on the world. Everybody's eyes are on that fucking screen. And that's bad. I think we should blow it up eventually. I hope the screens get all exploded one day. I'm definitely into that. But right now, you can't deny that's where people's eyes are at.
Yeah, very, very Uncle Ted pill they'd see, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Tell us what's going on with you. Tell us the show and what's happening. Tell us your prediction of what's going to happen.
Well, in terms of predictions, I would say, we're a little wobbly right now. I'm not giving a talk about politics. I'm talking about artistry. I think what happened in Rolling Stone is a big, big thing. And I would say for giving advice to people, I'm honored to call Baltic and Adam and Pegasus good friends. I'd say they're actually very good friends. If Baltic didn't give us a shout out and give us a boost our podcast, we would not. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. Baltic was a big, very big and platform. He was our Ezra Pound. He was our connection man.
Baltic can be Ezra Pound. I'm down. I support Baltic as Ezra Pound.
Yeah. He can get all the poetry artos, the 1920s flappers, But I would say overall, it's you cannot waste this opportunity. Now that you have people eyes on New Ritual Press, they have to be twice as cruel. I would say yes, you have to be cruel in your selections now. It can't be just your friends and hey, I saw your rolling piece, Baltic. Can I get my stuff written? No. It can't be just publishing your friends at this point. It has to be something that's actually profoundly strong, that makes a statement that builds up upon this. So I'd say I would say trying, if we have to be fragmented, if we can't coalesce over one big wave, we have to do the New York scene here, a little scene here. If we have to be scene queens, if we have to be pockets of scenes, at the very least it should be just shotgun style. You don't want rubber bullets in a shotgun. You want shit that's made out of the hardest steel there is. I'd say you got a platform the best, the strongest, the boldest division. And like I said, each of these pockets need to have a very strong weight to them. So I'd say don't waste the opportunity. That hole's going to be filled. We don't want Daily Wire slop filling in that hole. You want marble. You want the finest marble you can find filling up that hole. That's what I'd say in terms of predictions right now. Do not waste the opportunities that we have found ourselves in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're right. Now is the time to massively ramp up production of shit, which I've been saying forever, by the way. But, okay. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
I am 1/3 of the Tookies Mag Sidebar podcast. And before you say, no, I did not come up with that horrible name, you could blame that on David Harrod, that god-awful name. I wanted something far more catchier than that. But the whole point is we are the eugenic pressure. We are on the pressure. We cripple the coal and we shine the diamonds.
That's how you should. Yes, and keep it coming, guys. Okay. Thanks so much, man. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
For sure. Peace.